Welcome back to Unlimited Capital on the Best Ever CRE Network. I'm your host, Richard McGurr. Today's guest, Jeffrey Holst, proves that sometimes your biggest crisis can become your greatest opportunity. Jeffrey faced a near-death experience that forced him to completely rethink what success means, and since then has invested over $12 million across a series of deals and authored a book called No Bad Days. He's developed a philosophy about gratitude and perspective that every entrepreneur can learn from, because as we all know, the dominant theme of entrepreneurship is adversity and setbacks, and that building resilience is an absolutely required trait for anyone to push through the pain, push through the hard times, and build a successful business. We explored how you can take situations, find the positives, and come back better and stronger than before. And this isn't fluff. He gives step-by-step instructions about what happens, the process you need to go through when things happen, and how to move on with life, pick yourself up, and get on with the job of building your business. I think that this was an incredibly powerful conversation. I got a lot from it because, obviously I've gone through a lot of hard situations. Anyone who has built businesses has gone through hard situations. And, he helped me talk through and realize that a lot of these bad situations made me who I am today. I am the entrepreneur I am today because of the lessons learned, often hard lessons learned. And that now in my opinion, I have a great business. Being a capital raiser and being a fund of funds manager is the best business I've ever built. And so he helped me, realize that that's the problems I had made me the man I am today. And I hope you guys enjoy this episode as much as I did. Hi, Jeff. Welcome to Unlimited Capital.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Jeff, you're a real estate investor and entrepreneur. You've invested about $12 million in various real estate projects, but the thing that you're really well known for is helping people with the mental side of this business or even entrepreneurship. And I think that that's absolutely critical in entrepreneurship because this is ultimately a game of setbacks. So how do you approach that?
Yeah, well, that's a big topic, obviously, but I have a core philosophy that things happen for me, not to me. That if I'm going through something, I might as well be growing through it. So I try to reframe everything, right? I think to myself, oh man, that setback is hard, but hard isn't bad. We assign value to our experiences. If I get diagnosed, so I was diagnosed with leukemia, right, a long time ago, 2008. And I've been kind of if I'm famous or anything, and I don't think I'm famous, but if I was famous or anything, it would be that I don't have bad days. I haven't had a bad day since I was 17. Well, I'm old enough that in 2008, I was more than 17, right? I was about 30 at the time. And I hadn't had a bad day in quite a while. And people came into the hospital and they were like, "Oh, I bet you're having a bad day now." And I was like, "Not really." I didn't find out till later in the day. So most of the day was pretty good, but it did get harder after that. And I think about that a lot now because there's a muscle. It's like going to the gym a lot, right? You get used to it. There's neuroscience behind this, but the reality is the more you lean into positivity, the easier it is to see positivity, and vice versa. If you lean into negativity, you're going to see negativity. But what I try to remember is that getting diagnosed with leukemia is neither good nor bad. It has some negative effects. Obviously, I'd rather not have leukemia, but not getting diagnosed would be worse. Right. So there's positive effects too, right? If you don't know you have leukemia, you just die. And if you know you have leukemia, that's negative, but it's also positive because if I didn't have that information, I couldn't get the treatment that I got that allowed me to stay alive. Right. So if you think about it, I'm going to step back to the 10,000 foot view for a second. Somewhere in the world right now, someone's having the best day of their life. Somewhere else in the world, someone's having the worst day of their life. So the day is not really good nor bad. It's just how those individuals are perceiving it that matters. And I think that's what we have to try to remember. It's how we receive the day is how the day is for us. So if I think today's a good day, it doesn't matter what happens to me. If I think it's a good day, it is a good day for me. Now, somebody might say, well, you got diagnosed with leukemia. That's not a good day. And I'm like, well, honestly, I was a bankruptcy attorney when I was diagnosed with leukemia, and now I'm a kind of like retired hippie real estate investor, like I just do what I want. I enjoy my life. And I don't know that I would be where I am now if I hadn't been diagnosed then. I would probably be like, a sort of happy but unfulfilled bankruptcy attorney in West Michigan. And now I have a place in Puerto Rico and a place in Chattanooga. And, I'm just having a good time and enjoying my life. And all of that happened because of that diagnosis. If I had gotten it and went, oh man, my life's ruined, then my life would be ruined. But instead I went, what am I going to learn from this? And I learned valuable lessons from that experience that resulted in me having a much better life in the long run.
There's like two things I want to say here. Number one is, so I'm used to framing, because like I was saying earlier, entrepreneurship is a game of setbacks. You got to learn how to deal with that real early. So I was used to the framing, and the model that I've adopted the most is stoicism, where you expect bad things to happen. But this is like very different than that. Because stoicism more is like, you got to put it in its box, bad things happen, don't take it personally, get on with your life. So this is different than that.
Yeah, there's an element of it, though, in fairness. Because what I also say is there's a quote from the Dalai Lama. I think it was the Dalai Lama anyways. I'm pretty sure it was. So there's this quote about worrying, right? And he says, it never makes sense to worry because either you can do something about it or you can't.
Yeah.
And if you can't do something about it, then worrying isn't going to help. And if you can do something about it, you should go do it. So there is an element of stoicism in this philosophy, and that is good and bad stuff is going to happen to you. And the trick is to put the bad stuff in a box. If you can't do anything about it, just ignore it because it doesn't change anything, right? But there's a second piece of it, which is don't just put it in a box. Like take what you can from it and spin it as positive as possible, right? So when bad things happen, we deal with them in the best possible way and then move on. That's the stoic part of it, the moving on. But when good things happen, we want to embrace them, right? We want to expect good and bad, not just bad, because both will happen and probably every day. Like somebody's going to smile at you. Someone's going to cuss at you. It's going to happen every day. Like you're going to be driving down the road and someone's going to cut you off and someone else is going to like wave and be like, hi, and like we assign value to those things. Someone cuts me off. I could be like, man, what an a-hole or whatever. Right. But like, I could also be like, wow, he must be in a hurry. Like, I'm glad he was able to get in front of me. Like the value is how I perceive it. It doesn't have to be bad. Not everything is objectively good or bad. In fact, I might even argue nothing is objectively good or bad because we tell a story about the significance of the things that happen.
True.
And whatever we tell, that's how we receive that action.
And also that's part of the grieving process, is like you feel things really hard. And then as you move on with your life, you kind of figure out how to frame or, rationalize or stuff like that. So do you have, and like for lack of a better word, kind of coping mechanisms is the word that comes to mind to like help you move through the reframe faster? Because one of the things here is that, like, again, bringing this back to business, is that you have to put yourself back together pretty quickly. Like that is part of the game, and like very actively, because the world is moving on without you. You don't have a boss. You're your own boss.
Sure.
You got to get back on track.
So I recently made a pretty large investment in a deal that kind of went sideways, and it was someone else's deal. And I normally don't invest in other people's deals because I really like control. I'm a little I'm a little control freaky about that. I'm going to put an investment in someone else's deals, and it was a few $100,000, so it wasn't insignificant. It was money I didn't really want to lose. And what was worse is it was actually borrowed from a friend because I was like, this is a great deal and I don't have a lot of cash. Like, I'm going to borrow the money. So I've been paying interest to him. And the interest was like 8%, but the return on the investment was going to be like, 20. And I was like, I'm going to arbitrage this and everything's going to go good. And like a year and a half goes by and there's no returns on this investment. In fact, the person it's a new construction project, hadn't even broken ground yet. And I'm going, this isn't good. Like, I know I'm paying, 8% interest on a few $100,000 for a year and a half. And that's like, not an insignificant amount of money. Like, it's coming close to $50,000 at this point that I have to pay in interest for money that I don't have in my possession. And I'm like, I don't even know if this deal's ever going to happen. And, I'd made it when I knew the people, obviously, that I was investing with. And we had put an out in the contract that basically said, hey, if you don't get your bank loans by a certain time, we can just ask for the money back. And they hadn't got the bank loans, and they were way past that. And there was always coming next week. And so I thought, I'm going to ask for the money back. All right. And this is a very long answer to your question about coping mechanisms. But I said, I'm going to ask for the money back. And the guy's like, oh, well, we don't have quite that much money to give you back. And I'm like, well, you're supposed to be holding this money. Like, also, you haven't spent any money as far as I can tell. So, like, what's going on? And he's like, well, yeah, I'll get it back to you, and then he said, I'm going to put a check in the mail. And he sent me a photocopy of the check and tracking number for the shipping, and then the tracking didn't update, and it didn't update. And then like a week goes by, it still hasn't updated. And I'm like, this is very suspicious, right? Mm-hmm. Right. So like, yeah, I need to figure out what to do. Like, I'm like, okay, now I'm worried about the interest. Now I'm going, wait, maybe I'm out the whole investment. Like the money's just gone. Now I got to pay my friend back, right? Plus interest. And I don't even have anything to show for it. Like, this is a real problem, right? So the question is, when you're faced with all this pressure, and in like the last couple of years, we haven't been doing that many deals, and I went through a divorce, so I cut my cash flow in half. So I'm like, this is significant to me at this point, right? I have less assets, and I'm like, this is like, oof, it's going to be painful. Like, I don't want to pay this. I'll figure it out, right? Like, I knew I would figure it out. So that was my first thing. Like, my first coping mechanism is like, what's the real downside to this? The real downside to this is I can lose a couple $100,000. That sucks. Fortunately, I have a net worth that's sufficient to like survive that. Some people could not survive that, right? So I have to first start with like, let's evaluate what the real consequences here are. Because I'm assigning meaning to this. Like, what does it actually do? Is it going to cause me to lose my house? No, because I sold my house during COVID and I live in a studio apartment because I'm cheap and I'm single. So I'm like, I don't need, that's not a big deal. Is it going to cause me to lose my car or something? No, because it's free and clear. Like, so my life isn't going to get destroyed by this, right? That's the starting point. So I think the first thing is to like take a realistic assessment of the situation you're in.
I've heard that called catastrophizing. So I know someone, I'll just be more honest. My wife takes something called DBT, or she did before, dialectical behavioral therapy.
Sure.
And that one of the things they teach is the catastrophizing. And I think when things are really bad, you got to do that. That's where you just run through the checklist of like, something happens in my business. Is this going to put us out of business? No. Am I going to lose my house? No. Am I going to lose my life? No.
Yeah,
I mean, and once you even answered all those three questions, like things are much better. Like we're still in business. We're going to be fine. It's a great business. We're still growing.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Exactly. So the first step is just do that. The catastrophizing. I never heard of it referred to that way, but I like it.
It's a good term, right? Yeah.
It's good. Like figure out how bad what the situation really is. Because if you don't be realistic about the situation you're in, you can't even make good decisions, right? Yeah. So first, I accepted the situation I was in, and I said, okay, now what's going to happen? Now, I'm going to flash forward so I don't keep everyone in suspense. I called the guy and I said, listen, you're raising money. Like there's issues here. Like I feel like you don't want this to go sideways. Like I'm a lawyer. Like I'm not threatening you. I'm just saying like, I know the SEC's like website. I can report this. Like there are things that I can do that are nasty. I don't want to do those. So it would be best if you wired me the money because the check's not showing up. And I got a wire for the money and I have the money back. Now, I didn't expect that to work, right? Yeah. But like if I hadn't taken the step back and came from a point of strength where I'm like, F it, let's go see what happens. Like, I'm just going to tell him like, this is the end game. Like, here's what's going to happen. Right. And then all of a sudden I got the money and I actually don't think the guy was committing fraud. I don't want to imply anything of the sort. I really think like it was just a series of bad
plans went sideways.
Things just didn't work out. And like, I think he really just needed to take the time to find the money to pay me back because he knew he owed it to me. And I hope the project goes forward and the other investors make a lot of money. And it appears, this has been a few months now, it appears that actually is occurring. Like I drive by the site occasionally and I say, oh, look, I see stuff happening there. Like that's good. And part of me is like, man, I should have just waited it out. Right. But at the same time, like I needed to feel what I felt, and I needed to make the decision based on what I made. And I don't know that that is a good investment or a bad investment. And I do know that I lost some money, even though I got all my money back. I lost the interest for a year and a half, and I don't love that, but I'd rather cut my downside exposure and move on. And so I did. And I wouldn't be able to make that decision if I didn't first assign value to the situation I'm in. So that's the next step after sort of evaluating the worst case scenario. The next is like, what is the best case scenario for me? What does that look like? And what do I really want to happen? What's the goal that I have? I've reevaluated the situation. I've looked at the downside. Now, how do I deal with the situation I'm in to get the best possible result based on the information I have? Because that's the other thing. I can look back at it now and say, geez, I might have been better off just to wait it out. It might have ended up being a great investment. But I didn't have that information at the time. I was operating on the information I had at that time. And I'm a very big believer in the fact that people almost never make the wrong decision. Like a lot of people go, oh, that was a wrong decision. Well, retrospectively, it may appear to be wrong, but it's not a wrong decision if you would have made the same decision with the same information. Right. So like I could go, oh, well, man, I'm disappointed. They're building this beautiful new property and I could have owned a piece of it. Sure, I am disappointed by that. I would like to still be in that deal, but I would have made that decision every time because I thought I wasn't getting my money back. I made the decision that I thought was right based on the information I had, and I've got to be okay with that. So that's like the next step is recognizing that once you analyze your situation properly, you look at the best and worst case scenarios, and then you make a decision, you own that decision, and you don't worry about second guessing yourself. So that's how I cope with things in business to turn it around in a short version.
So what about before you finish that process though? Like what if this happened to you yesterday and you still have to show up to work? Is there a way that you can kind of put a Band-Aid on it for people? Because this whole process you're describing, I mean, takes, at least in my...
it takes a while. Yeah. It doesn't happen instantly. Yeah, I mean, there's always stress in life, right? So like, I mean, I'm never going to claim I never have stress because that would be crazy. But I do use self-identifying statements. So, I have the coffee mug for people that are watching the video. It says no bad days. And I have tattoos on my arms that say no bad days in different languages, and I wrote a book called No Bad Days. Like I lean into this identity as a person who doesn't believe in having bad days.
Yeah.
And that makes it easier for me. Because when bad stuff happens, and it will happen to me, like it does everyone else, I say to myself, I don't have bad days. Like, I got to figure this out. I don't have a choice. Like, this is who I am. I'm a person who doesn't have bad days. And I think there's value in creating a narrative for yourself that tells a story that you agree with. If I step back for a second, Hal Elrod, who wrote Miracle Morning, right? Like he famous international author. He has this quote that I really love. He said, the moment you accept 100% responsibility for anything in your life is the moment you can change anything in your life. Mm-hmm. Right. And I love that quote because it's not saying like, oh, hey, it's my fault this thing happened to me. Like, it's not my fault I got leukemia, but I had to accept responsibility for it. I had to say, like, this is my responsibility to deal with. Because if I don't deal with it, I lose control over the outcome, right? And so when I'm in that moment, I try to lean into that, like, here's what I can do right now, and that's all I can do, and it'll be what it is. And then I just try to, stay positive on it. And I'm not perfect at it. No one's perfect at anything, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And, when negative stuff happens, like another example, I had cancer a second time, like talk about bad luck, right? Like, so I ended up getting melanoma a few years ago. And my first reaction was like, oh crap, like 2 cancers, I'm definitely dead. Cause like when you get a second cancer, you're pretty much like, that's a bad sign, right? You don't want to be that guy that just keeps getting cancers because they usually end up dead. Although we all usually end up dead as far as I can tell. So it's just a question of, timing. But I prefer to be around a few more days if I can help it. So my first reaction was, wow, that sucks. My second reaction, like literally instantly, and this is just because I've been doing this so long, was this is going to make a great story on a podcast someday. Like I'm going to tell people this and they're going to be like, that's amazing. And, I wish I could tell you this is the first time I've used that example, but the reality is it has made a great story. It adds to my life narrative and it makes it taught me a lesson, but it also uses an instructional lesson for other people, right? I'm able to utilize it in a way to make the world a better place. And I think on some level, like, that's probably the most important thing we can do in business or personal life is leave the world just a little bit better than it was before we got here. Because we can't fix everything. But if I'll make your world a little bit better, I change the world for you. I might not change the world for everyone, but I changed it for you. And maybe that's good enough.
No, I really like that. So I think one of the things that you directly alluded to was like developing an identity and how that identity responds to, stressors or adversity. So what are like, that's incredibly important because I can say that that's part of mine. Like I know I've started multiple businesses, which means I've had a lot of bad things that have happened in those businesses. I feel that every business I've built is objectively superior to the previous one in like either the financial model or like for example, the reason I like the current one is that I had so much headcount in my last business that I developed a business now that does not have revenue tied to headcount, And so how do I like, and that's like a big part of my, like an identity that I've created. So how do you like deliberately form this identity? And it's very much that like, when something bad happens to me, I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. These things happen to me. Like part of being an entrepreneur is having the resiliency to like keep going and pushing against all odds where other people would quit. But like, how do you like intentionally start to form that shell? Because that I did intentionally form that shell, but this is like, I just heard that my high school reunion, we're having our 20th, which that was a shock to me, but like, this is like 15 years in the game. And I have this or at least I think a very resilient identity. Like it's part of my identity. Absolutely is being resilient. How do you, instead of stumbling into that, like create that intentionally?
Yeah. Obviously things like affirmations and stuff help with that, but the reality is it's a choice. And I stumbled into it unintentionally also. I happen to do it earlier than some people in a lot of ways, and it's evolved over time. I have my own personal identifying statement that's more private than just the no bad days guy. Like, the no bad days thing is like, that's what I say to people. And I do feel this. And I think integrity is really important when it comes to identity statements. And so my definition of integrity, which I borrowed from one of my life coaches, is that when your thoughts, words, and actions are completely aligned. Right. And we're always going to be a little bit out of integrity. So integrity is like a mountain with no top. We're like constantly going for the summit. And then we get to what we think is the summit. And then we're like, oh, that's not the summit. There's something else to work on. So I think that the secret is to like be really thoughtful about how you want to show up, because at some level, who we're being determines who we are. Right. Like however we act is how we become. And so if we show up and we be a person, I know that's a weird phrasing, but like if we show up and we be the person that we want to be, like if you want to be an entrepreneur, then, hang out with entrepreneurs for sure. That's the Jim Rohn, like you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, but also like do the things that other entrepreneurs do. Like if entrepreneurs are resilient, then you need to figure out how you can be resilient. That you found it, sort of over time. But what you have to do is you have to say, hey, this is just part of the process, and you need to lean into it and just keep leaning into it. And the sooner you recognize it, the easier it becomes. So,
I think if you have like 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, that's an average of 1 step forward. You just need to stay in the game.
Yeah. And listening to podcasts, going to conferences, hanging out with people that are doing the kinds of things that you want to do. All of these things help you. I have a formula. I do a keynote speech sometimes. I call it the extraordinary life formula. And, I think extraordinary itself is like a really interesting word because, it's really 2 words, right? Extra and ordinary. Mm-hmm. It's not, it's a single word, but it's extra and ordinary. So if you want to live like an extraordinary life, you have to like take your ordinary life and do just a little bit extra. Right. Mm-hmm. And to me, one of the biggest things you can do, the extra thing you can do is, create an internal identity that's consistent. Speak it into existence. there's I don't know if it's true or not, but I was told a long time ago that there's an Aramaic word that's very similar to abracadabra. It's like abra and cadabra. And it may be Aramaic, it may not. I've never verified it. So like, don't quote me on it.
I'm not in a position to verify that.
Yeah. I think we can like ask, ChatGPT or something and find out. But like what I like about this is the person that explained it to me said that abra and cadabra means I speak, therefore it is, right? And that flows from like abracadabra, like prestidigital or whatever, like I'm going to do this and it's going to just become like the rabbit's going to appear in the hat or whatever. But I think that's true in life. Like if you say you don't have bad days enough, you don't have bad days because we create our own existence. And so I try to like lean into this idea that we're very, very powerful creators of our own existence. And I don't mean this in like a weird spiritual religious way, but I mean, there is a spiritual component to it. Like if we went back to like scriptural references, we could say like, in the beginning was the Word and the Word was God, right? Like that's what it says in the book of John. And like, but this is pervasive in all religions because it's a universal truth. Like, if we say we are something and we lean into that and we show up as that, we are that thing. Like, if you really lean into it, if you say I'm an entrepreneur and this is what entrepreneurs do, then that's what you do. And then you go do it and you just believe it. And so we can hijack our mental processes by just deciding that's what we want to be and then telling everyone that's what we want to be. One of my friends bought his first apartment building. He's kind of famous, so some of your listeners may connect it, but like he started out by just telling everyone, "Hey, I'm going to buy apartment buildings. Like I buy apartment buildings." And some lady at his church was like, "Oh, I have an apartment building for sale." Right? That's the thing. It's not like it's a magic trick. It's like it creates opportunities. I'm a big believer in opportunities always there. It doesn't knock. It waits for us to grab the freaking door and open it. And, so like if you go do these things and you create this internal identity, then the opportunity shows up. And then that's the little extra that tips the scale in favor of the extraordinary life. And I think that, everyone who does extraordinary things has to first wake up to an opportunity and then they have to go take the right action on it. Like that's how you get there.
Yeah. I heard something that was like, it's not luck. Good things happen to people who are prepared is how it works.
It's the same concept. Yeah. I mean, Richard Branson talks about that all the time. He's like, people say I'm lucky, but the reality is I'm just like always looking for opportunity. And then when it shows up, I'm ready to take action on it. That's, I mean, honestly, at the basis that if I were giving the whole keynote speech on the extraordinary life formula, I'd be like, look, it's inspired thought plus the right action. Like you have to first think of something and then you have to take the right action on it. If you do those two things, you end up in the right place. And that right place is whatever that goal or dream or vision was. It's really actually about that simple.
I think one of the reasons, at least for me personally, that taking action is so important is that that's like an ability to take back control. Because I think in any bad situation, you have to start mitigation, and that like the one thing that you have under your control is working, starting to create a new document or create a new plan or typing up emails to people that are effective. Just all of that stuff immediately makes me feel better when I start doing
taking any action sometimes is worth it. But in order to really get the best result, it's best if you take the right action, right? So that's like my formula literally is inspired thought plus the right action equals extraordinary life. Like two variables: inspired thought, right action. I have ways to come up with inspiration. Hanging out with people, going to conferences, asking yourself empowering questions, all that. But when we talk about the right action, if your inspired thought is I want to be a real estate investor, let's just say like that's what you want, right? And you go to real estate conferences and you read books about real estate and you create a website about how you're a real estate investor and you have business cards and you tell everyone you're a real estate investor. You're taking action, but you're not a real estate investor until you invest in real estate, right? Like you're not taking the right action. And I know people like this. I know people that have been going to real estate meetups for 20 years and haven't bought their first deal. And when you talk to them, they're like, yep, analyzing some deals, going to get my first one before the end of the year. And you're like, yeah, I heard that 15 years ago from you, right? They're not taking the right action. So there is like a value to taking the right action. But to that point, There's also like, if you're launching a rocket ship to the International Space Station, which is, kind of hard to do, right? Very few people are able to do this. It takes a ton of action, right, to get into orbit. But if you miss by 20,000 miles, it's no big deal because it takes very little action once you're already in motion to readjust that. Like you get outside of the Earth's gravity and now you're not outside it, but you're outside of the pull of gravity. So you're now orbiting the Earth. Mm-hmm. At that point, it takes very little extra action to get to the right place. So that's why I think like taking action is the first step. There's a quote I love. It's basically, the difference between successful people and those who never succeed is that successful people take action without all of the possible information. Right. Not no information. They're going to gather some information, but they also are just going to say at some point, like Richard Branson says, screw it. Let's do it. Like, let's just figure it out as we go. Like we're going to build an airline. We're going to build a spaceship, whatever. And I think that's a big part of it.
So I'm going to ask a weird question, but have you ever heard of the book, The Lean Startup?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I never read it. A friend of mine really loves it.
So I'm like a lifetime startup guy. Like he used to be a VC. I mean, my company, even though we're in capital raising and real estate, we're very tech enabled. Like we have a whole software front end and everything like that. What that book talks about is taking the action that will collect the most information. And so that every action you take will either move you forward or try and what it does is prove or disprove the key hypothesis. So I wanted to know if like you've heard of that framework, which is like, it's like the minimum viable product experimentation kind of framework for moving forward.
Yeah. So I started a tech company once. It was a disaster. And I didn't utilize that framework. And my partner in that kept saying, hey, I don't really like I think we should like look into this lean startup thing. And like, he's like, it's a really good idea. And I just kept being resistant to it because this is a long time ago. This is like back in 2010 or 11 or something like that. And in whatever, we ended up with a patent. It was a whole thing, right? Like, and I think like if I'd been a more mature investor, I would have done a lot better at that business. But when you start new businesses, you learn a lot of stuff. And one of the things I learned is I didn't have a passion for tech. I mean, I love tech like on the surface, but I'm not a developer. That's not who I am. Right. Like, and I was trying to, do it because it sounded cool kind of thing. I got ahead of my own self. I'm like, oh, I'm successful in real estate. Like, I'm going to go start a tech company. Like, I don't know anything about like, so there's like a lot of life lessons involved in that. But I will say this. I never really leaned into that. And when I did read it, it was kind of like surface level. But when you say something, and what you said right now really resonates with me, that it says taking the action that will collect the most information, that's actually exactly correct. Like I do that instinctively now, but I wish I had read that 20 years ago or 15 years ago or whatever and been more thoughtful about that. So thank you for sharing that. In fact, I wrote it down, like take lean startup, take the action that collects the most information. Like I wrote that down.
And disproves the most dangerous hypothesis. So you have to find the hypothesis. I like that too. Yeah. The hypothesis that will make or break the business, which is usually there's usually two. One is, does the user have a problem that is important enough to pay money to solve? And number two, does your solution actually solve said problem?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And so you can think that, so the way that you backtrack that is like, if you think you had an app that's going to solve said problem and that people are going to pay for, you can decompose that usually into a spreadsheet or a service that is going to be like higher touch and like maybe not scalable, but that doesn't really matter. But that there is a way for you to test that without building the damn app.
Yeah, I know. And actually you did utilize this. So we had an idea, a couple of years ago to create I'll share this and someone will probably run with it. And if they do, I'm happy for them.
Yeah,
but I had this idea. I had this idea. I'm not doing it. So someone else should do it. I would love it. I'll use their service actually, like to create like an Uber of cost segregations where I could literally just upload to the cloud, here's the basic information that I have. And then I get a bunch of quotes and I and the engineer itself, instead of these cost seg companies, which I have nothing against them because they provide a valuable service, but generally the way that model works is there's a guy who does the work, there's a guy who owns the software and does the marketing. The marketing people make the majority of the money. And my thought was, why not let the engineer make a little bit more and the end user, me, pay less? Because I found out that I'm paying this company $10,000 for cost segregation. They're paying an engineer $2,000 and they're making the spread. Right.
And then 4,000 that goes to marketing. They're
like, why not pay the engineer 4,000 and both him and I are more happy. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get a whole bunch of engineers. I'm getting them to buy onto this system and I'm going to create this tech where you can just go on the app and do it. And then we went, well, that seems like a lot of work. Why don't we just hire a VA?
Exactly.
Let's just have the VA, like you send an email to this, the app would be just like you put it in and it sends an email to an email box and my VA reads it, sends it out to all the engineers, collects their quotes and sends it back to you, right? I don't need to automate this. I can just so that was literally my thought. And that's because of that MVP concept, right? I'm like, what's the version that it doesn't have to be the most efficient version. It just has to deliver the deliverable. And we were going to do it, but cost segregations were less important because, bonus depreciation was fading away. Of course, that's changed now. Mm-hmm. So that opportunity's back. So somebody should jump on it. I will be happy to pay less for my cost segregations. I promise.
Yeah. Call for startup. That's a call for startup. If anybody's out there want to build it,
even invest in it. Bring me the MVP. Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. Another thing I wanted to get your opinion on, kind of going to another tangent here, is have you ever heard of the term enclosed personality? Or costumed personality?
No, but I can sort of deduce intellectually what that might mean, but go ahead, explain to me.
Well, it's like I put on a dress shirt. That was beaten into me in my first real professional job. I had a finance job in Hong Kong at a venture capital firm. And then I'm a Southern Californian. And so, my dad was a successful guy and a business owner. So my idea of the way a professional dressed was khakis and a polo. And then for reference, I was working in Citibank Tower where Citi, Goldman, and Blackstone had offices. And that flew for 3 days. And then my boss gave me $600 and said, hope you're settling in well. You're not allowed to wear this again. And then over time, I absorbed that into a personality where it's anytime I leave the house and it's related to business, I wear a dress shirt, I wear dress shoes, I wear my chinos, I do this because it is who I am in work mode. And so I kind of thought of that when you were on one of your other points about the creation of an identity. And so for me,
it's definitely related. So I believe any of these mental tricks matter. And I actually think it's super important. So I know this kid, he has a little podcast and no one's ever heard of him, but he's really cool. He's in my mastermind.
Richard McGurr. Host of
What's
Unlimited
that?
Capital. I said his name is Richard McGurr, host of Unlimited Capital. No,
yeah, that's right. Richard, it's definitely you. No, so he has a super small podcast and he's a really great guy. And he said to me, one of his mentors told him to dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Right. Mm-hmm. And this dude wears a Hawaiian shirt every single day. And I said to him, what do you mean? You wear a Hawaiian shirt all the time. And he's like, yeah, I want to be retired. So I'm dressing like I'm retired. And he's 22 years old. And I'm like, I love this kid. Such a great way to look at it. So conceptually though, I think there's something to be said about this. You show up how you feel and what you wear impacts how you feel. So my business partner and I in Puerto Rico, we have a couple of small businesses and we purposely show up for business meetings. We went to a robotics conference in Detroit and we show up wearing shorts and linen shirts and flip-flops, and people are and we got cigar in our pocket, and we're outside smoking cigars and people are going, the heck is going on with these guys? Because for us, that's who we want to, that's the image that we want for our company. We're the cool Caribbean cats that are doing it, but it's very intentional. And because of that, when I'm wearing that particular outfit, I'm in a certain mode and I'm showing up and I'm being more creative and I'm acting. We're designing sailboats like that, we're sailing yachts, like 65-foot aluminum sailing yachts, and like we're more creative when we're in that mode. Like we're thinking outside of the box. It's a different way of thinking. When I was a lawyer, I always wore a suit though, right? And when I wear a suit to this day, I feel a little bit like in power mode. Like I'm going to go like attack something, because I've associated that behavior with that suit. Right. And, I kind of miss that sometimes. Sometimes I put on my suit just to go out like to dinner or something, just so I can feel powerful. Right. So there's definitely real value to that. Actually, if we have time for a short tangent,
I think we do.
I just got done reading. Like, I'm really fascinated by like this extraordinary life thing. So I like read books about people that I think have done extraordinary things. Like it's like a thing. Like I'm always researching, how does one become extraordinary? And one of the most extraordinary people that I'm ever aware of ever to live is Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin's fascinating. Like we think of him as like,
yeah,
a lot of people think of him as like some weird hippie dude that flew a kite in an electric storm. And that's true. He did do that. But he also like, mapped the ocean currents, and like those maps are still on the NASA website today.
Yeah.
And he invented terms like battery. like it didn't exist before. Like it's not like he just flew a kite in an electric storm. Like he figured out how to store electricity. He came up with the concept of storing electricity. These things are like legitimate scientific discoveries, but he also like created a whole new nation and like basically single-handedly manipulated people into the Declaration of Independence. But all of that stuff, he was, and when we think of him, he's wearing a suit and he's got, bifocals, which he invented, by the way, on, all this stuff, right? But he went to Paris during the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
And he wore a coonskin cap and looked like Daniel Boone, right? He showed up there and he portrayed an image of a person who was like a bumpkin from the frontier. He stayed up late. This is the guy who wrote like early to bed, early to rise, makes you healthy, wealthy, and wise, right? No, he stayed up late and got drunk and hung out with like random women. He basically was a completely different person when he was in Paris, because he analyzed the situation and said, this is what you need. Right. This is what you need I want the Parisians to like me so they'll give money to my country to support us in a war against somebody they don't like. Mm-hmm. And if he had not done that, we'd probably lose the Revolutionary War.
Oh, no, totally. Like when the French Navy showed up was pretty much when it was over.
Yeah. Like, that's when the world, that's when we made the corner. I'm reading a book about Washington right now for that reason, because Washington's another fascinating character. But these guys, we were very fortunate as an early country to have these guys. They had flaws like everyone else, but they were also very determined folk. And I find that determination is a big thing. But again, Washington did the same thing. Washington showed up every day, even when his soldiers had no food, when they were wearing dirty, rundown rags. He showed up in a perfectly pressed suit. That picture of him crossing the Potomac, the painting where he's got a top hat on and he's holding his, that's the reality of Washington. Not only did he showed up like, I'm a person who looks like I belong in charge of an army because I need people to believe in me. Right. Yes. And that's what you're talking about. And I think that level of wisdom is something that we often forget. And like, I think it's really important to be strategic about it. And I mean, there are people that take different strategies. Zuckerberg is famous for always wearing the same clothes. And Jobs was like that too, right? These guys were very successful guys. Well, Jobs was and Zuck is, but they showed up in a certain way, but it was strategic. It wasn't willy-nilly. And a lot of people don't think about this stuff. Like, that's why I like the, show up for the job you want quote that my friend told me, like, I'm like, yeah, actually, that's a good point. But like, also, recognize that how you are being includes how you dress. It includes like, one of the self-identifying statements. Like if I was saying, like, I told you I have like a more personal one that I don't usually share. I'm going to share it because it's relevant here. I like to think of myself as the most interesting man in the world, like the Dos Equis guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm the guy who climbs Kilimanjaro and like thinks about buying safari lodges in Tanzania and, you know, goes to Antarctica and climbs on a glacier and, you know, takes National Geographic quality photos, like just weird shit. Like I just love being this interesting person. And I think of it as like a mix of like, you know, Hemingway and Franklin and like all and I know I'm not that person, right? Like I'm not the most interesting man in the world, but I try to lean into this idea of being the most interesting man in the world, right? And because I believe that if I show up as that, I'm going to make my life way more interesting and I'm going to be more inspiring to other people. And so I feel like what you're talking about with what did you call the clothing choice?
I think it's called like, it's either enclosed personality or like costumed personality.
Yeah.
One of the two.
Yeah, either way, enclosed personality, costume personality. I think that we as an individual get to decide how we show up. And I think that is a big part of it. But the mental part on the inside is more important. But like my definition earlier of integrity, if you speak and think and act in a certain way, you're in alignment. That's integrity. It's a lot easier to be aligned with I'm the most interesting man in the world if I show up at a robotics conference wearing flip-flops. Like people are like, well, what's up with this guy? Like, you know, like, why are you at a robotics conference? Like, why are you asking me technical questions about robotic welding while I'm carrying a lightsaber? Because that happened too. Like somebody had to like play lightsaber and they're like, you want this? And I'm like, heck yeah, I do. I'm going to use it to take down a freaking, you know, humanoid robot while I'm negotiating the purchase of a welding robot, you know? Like, you know, I'm just going to lean into being really freaking cool whenever I can. And I'm not that cool. I promise. I'm actually kind of lame and boring, but like, I'm going to keep saying I'm cool and I'm going to keep acting as if I'm cool. And I'm going to keep doing things that are cool because if I do that long enough, I become cool. And I want to be cool. Not because I think cool is the ultimate virtue. I have like a whole series of these things that I try to lean into, but I call it like, I actually thought about writing a book about this. You know what? You guys can steal this too if you want. Go ahead and write this book. I don't have time to do all these ideas I have. I call it mental hashtagification. Like no bad days is a hashtag.
Yes.
Like it means more than those 3 words. I wrote a whole book about no bad days. But if I say to myself when something happens, no bad days, I'm activating my mental hashtag that puts me into that mode. Same with putting on a suit puts me into my power lawyer mode. Right? I can use that mental hashtag to have that same kind of effect. And if you do all these things at once, it becomes really powerful. Show up with flip-flops, talk about no bad days, swing your lightsaber at the robots, and now you're the most interesting man in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if there's an undertone here, this is just a phrase that came to mind. It's like a 360-degree intentionality about the way you live your life. If intentionality is a word.
Yeah.
I just made that up.
I think it's a word.
Yeah, I think it's a word. Pretty sure that's a word. It's a word now. No, I think I kind of did that too. You know, like that really makes sense. Like I wanted to see the world. And so I said, I'm going to go find a job overseas.
Yeah. And Hong Kong's amazing. Like, congratulations. I'm jealous of your life now.
Yeah. No, and then I tell people like it's kind of the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, you lived in Hong Kong? I'm like, yeah, I'm a permanent resident. I lived there for 8 years. And people go like, wow.
Yeah, that's amazing, right? Like, and that's the thing. You did that because you created the life that you wanted.
No, and I wanted to be interesting. I was
the
like,
sooner people recognize that they get to decide, the better. Like I'm gonna walk the Camino de Santiago next year. Like that's a goal of mine. Like I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna like walk 500 miles across rural Spain. Not because I want to be, not because I even want to do it. I just want to be the kind of guy that does that thing.
Yeah.
I want to look back and say I walked across rural Spain. Same reason I climbed Kilimanjaro. Listen, Kilimanjaro is miserable. The highest mountain in Africa. It took me 8 days. I smelled really bad. My toes have still never recovered. I've got like screwed up toenails. And I've probably got melanoma because of that. Like it's literally that bad. But the reality of the situation is I don't regret it at all. because it's part of my identity now. Like I'm that guy that did that thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it for other people. I did it because I wanted to feel alive. And I wanted to remember that if I can do that, I can do other hard things.
Yeah.
It changes your perspective. And yeah, I mean, freaking amazing living in Hong Kong for 8 years. I lived in Cairo for a few months. I thought that was pretty cool, but not 8 years.
Yeah. Well, it's because I got there. So what happened is that I was very into developing markets. So, I was very wrong. I'll leave that there. We can talk about things that happen to you, and then you learn to live with it. So I was a big believer in globalism. To say and that's like a slang. I'll say I was a big believer in free trade, internationalization. I thought that we were all going to, like, China and the US cooperation was going to be a beautiful future.
Sure.
Everything like that.
Everyone thought that everyone thought that 15 years ago, though.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Like I don't blame you for that. I was an MBA student saying those same things, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I had a college professor who, like, gave us a Harvard paper or something like that was like, this is how big the international opportunity is. And I was like, that sounds like a fun way to live your life. And also, I'm like really going to bank on a trend. And then I moved there. And then my initial plan was to go there for 2 years to be a China expert. And then you realize that, like, China's like the largest country in the world or whatever, and just unbelievably complex and everything like that. Yeah. And I was like, well, if I'm committed to this idea, then I would be, like you were saying, integrity. There's no way I could leave here after 2 years. I would have failed my mission. Like, I know nothing. Like, I'm a year in and I still know almost nothing about this place. So I hung on for 8 years, and that 7 years was to get a permanent residence. And so that was my target, because the only way to become a permanent resident of China, by the way, the only way is be either through Macau or Hong Kong. Because even if you live on the mainland and you marry a local and you live there, you will be applying for visas until the day you die, and they can deny you.
Yeah, I have a 10-year visa right now, but for China, I mean, I think China's fascinating. I doubt I'll ever apply for another one because it's such a pain in the rear end. Like, it's not easy. And that's just for a freaking tourist visa, right? Yeah. Like, when mine expires in 2028 or whatever, like, I'm probably not going back after that. Like, I might. I don't know. But, like, it's a hard place. It's hard. Right. Yeah. I mean, Hong Kong is easy to travel to. Like, Hong Kong is great. I love Hong Kong. I went there last year for the first time. I want to spend more time there, actually. Super hot, though. I don't think I'd want to live
all
there.
All of Asia is hot. I would say that.
No, I know. Singapore is miserable like that, too. Like,
Singapore is even hotter. Yes.
Yeah, Singapore is great, but, like, so hot. It's so huge.
And I mean, talk about identity. Whenever it's hot out now, you know what I say? I'm a Hong Konger. I wore a suit in 99 degrees, 99% humidity every day for 8 years.
I do the same thing. I mean, I live in Puerto Rico part-time, and I'm like, nah, could be worse. Could be Puerto Rico in August. I'm not in Puerto Rico right now, so I feel like that's a win. It's August. I'm not there.
No. So,
but I mean, I think that's great. And, like, but I will say one thing that you did say, one thing that I think is really worth keeping in mind. You said, after a year at Hong Kong, you were like, well, I would be a failure if I left at 2 years because I haven't learned enough or I haven't done enough. And I think that's a risk point for all people in life. You're in a long-term relationship, you have a job, maybe you did a job for 6 years or 10 years, or you started a business and it lasted 5 years. In fact, one of my friends runs this business. It doesn't really matter what it is, but he's been doing it for like 15 years, right? And it paid his bills for 15 years. And he owns the building that the business is in. And but he's subsidizing the business by renting out other space in the business. Otherwise, the businesses wouldn't be making any money now. Post-COVID, the business model doesn't work as well as it used to. It's an office-related type business, but he could rent the space out and make a lot of money. In fact, he would make more money renting the space to a different business than running the business, right? Yeah. And I had this conversation with him, and he's like, yeah, but I don't want to feel like I failed. And I'm like, no, man, you didn't fail. You built a business that bought you a building that's worth a lot of money. Like, you won. Like, that business took care of you for 13 years. And now the business is going to take care of you for the rest of your life because you're going to have $300,000 a year in income from the rents. Right. And, like, so when you're in Hong Kong, I'm not judging your choice to stay longer and get a permanent residence. That's a completely reasonable choice. But if you're sitting there at a year in and you're going like, oh, it's a failure if I quit now, bullshit. You
That's
lived a
true.
year in Hong Kong. That makes you awesome already.
Yeah.
Like if I go to Africa to buy a safari lodge, which I did a couple of years ago post COVID, and then I decide not to buy it, was that a failure? No, it wasn't a failure.
No.
It was awesome. I went to go hang out in Tanzania for 2 months, and
Yeah.
I got to like hike in the bush and like, have to like have like, Maasai guides with like spears protect me from lions. Like that's freaking awesome. Like that wasn't a failure totally just because I didn't buy the business.
Well, especially because I can assume we don't have to get into it. We all know what happened in Hong Kong and how that all ended. Like that is and it took me a long time to recover from that. I'd put it that way, especially because I had a large business. I had like over 80 employees. I was doing really well. And then simultaneous political crises in Eastern Europe and China. And just like plus COVID, it was over. I mean, and I walked out of there. Like I spent 8 years of my life believing in a future that has absolutely not happened. And all these things happened, except you know what it came out to it? I was in management consulting. I know how to work, man. I know how to show up. I know how to run a business. I know how to do this. I've got a cool story. And when I tell people
and now you have a super lean business that doesn't have a whole bunch of employees.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like your world is so much
it took
better.
me like 3 years to get over the terms where I left Hong Kong. Cause it basically was like, okay, you can't see my hands on the podcast, but like massive, stunning rise. I was making like over $1 million a year. I was going crazy and then just like gone.
Yeah.
Like, and then it was gone.
But that's actually like, and I know we're close to wrapping up here, but that's actually like what we started the show with, right?
Yeah.
Like how do we recover from
myself?
But it's not just for business. Like, listen, I was married for 19 and a half years. I did not think I would ever get divorced. I had a very shocking situation occur where it became obvious that it wasn't going to work. And I sat there and went, I wasted 20 years of my life. Yeah. Like what was I thinking?
I lost 8 years of my life. I was like,
that's how I felt. I felt like, I lost 20 years of my life.
Yeah.
And for a minute it felt that way. But then I realized I like who I am.
Yeah.
I like the person I become. And I enjoyed a lot of that 20 years.
No, so
and I guarantee some of the time you were in Hong Kong, you had a lot of fun. You're making $1 million a year. You're having a great time. Right. Yeah. And so did you really lose 8 years of your life? No. Or did you just have a really cool experience for 8 years and then you moved on and you like who you are now? You like what you learned from it. So like that might be the ultimate lesson, right?
No, I know that. It took me a long time.
Yeah, it takes a while. But the thing is, if we recognize in advance when that hard stuff is happening to us, like I said, when I got diagnosed with melanoma, this will make a great story someday. Like if we can get ourselves tricked into believing that, it becomes true and it becomes true faster. Yeah. So that's the best advice I can give anyone that's listening to the show. If you stuck around this long, the golden nugget is it doesn't matter what's happening to you. Just grow through it. If you're going to go through it anyway, you might as well be growing and like figure out how to find the positive and just move on. Like be happy with who you are. Like, you know what? I love my ex-wife. She was a great person and we had a lot of great times together. And I talked to her yesterday. We've been separated for a few years now. I try to just be positive when I talk to her. Like there's no hard feelings. And like it took a minute to get there. It did. But that's the way the world works, man. We go through hard stuff and we come out stronger.
Yep. And you can come out stronger and come back and listen to Unlimited Capital every Monday. Thank you, Jeffrey. It was really a pleasure. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
Have a great day.